Hi everyone, my name's Anne-Marie. Welcome to this Spellbinders card making project. In this project we're going to create a gorgeous card, but we're going to cover a few techniques as well. Now you might want to sit back, relax, go get yourself a cuppa because it's going to be a long one. And I want to show you a few tricks that you might like for watercolouring. Because if you think, oh, I have to be an artist to do that, Anne-Marie, no you don't, and I want to prove that to you. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at the items that we're going to use from Spellbinders. And the first thing that we're going to do, the first item that we're going to look at is, it's a new stamp and it says, I could fall for you. It's a large stamp. It stamps perfectly when you've warmed it in. And by saying that, you just want to stamp it a couple of times. And I'll give you a few tips about how to stamp this with it being larger, because you might not have a mount that it will fit on. Don't worry about that, because you'll be able to stamp it flat. So we'll look at that. We're also going to be using the tiny sentiment stamps. We're going to use one of these for the inside of our card. These are perfect for the insides of cards. They're perfect for the outsides of cards. They stamp so well and so clear that, you know, they're great for any project. And then the last thing we're going to be using is one of my favourite sets from Spellbinders. We've used this before, and we used it for a black watercolour card. And I didn't show you how to watercolour the flowers. Well, on this occasion I'm going to show you how to watercolour the leaves and to get different effects in your watercolouring, because I think you can get so much out of this set rather than just stamping and die cutting it. So we're going to be looking at that. Now, before I forget, the stamp. So this is a large stamp. How to stamp this? I will turn it over, pat it with the ink pad, pick it up carefully and pop it down on my card, and then press it down all the way around, keeping one hand on the stamp all the time while pressing down. So you could do it that way, or you could do it the other way. Tap it with your ink pad like that all the way, and then take a piece of cardstock, place it on top of it, and then smooth it over like that and press it down. I find doing it that way is the best way, simply because then you can keep even pressure on it all the time that you're smoothing it down, if that makes sense. But that's how I normally stamp a big stamp, because it literally covered my block and it was hanging over the edge. So hopefully just give it a go, try it, play with it, but warm it up, which I basically mean use it a few times on scrap paper just to take off that newness. And once you've practiced on scrap paper, then basically you'll be good to go with that. Now we're going to do some watercolouring, because some of the leaves and foliage that we're going to use are watercoloured, and they look as though they've been shaded, and they look as though they've had time and trouble taken over creating them. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit, she says, because I want you to see these effects. And I'm going to use my Curatak pens, and I'm just going to choose 3 colours. In fact, it isn't 3 colours, it's slightly more than 3 colours. Excuse my arm while I just pick the right colours out of my box. There we go. I've picked 5 colours because the actual card that we eventually make is going to be autumnal. So I've picked out the yellow, the orange and the red, and then the brown and the green. So there the colours that we're going to use for our watercolouring. So I'll just leave them to one side like that, and you can see them. Now I'm also going to use what's called a water brush. This is a little brush that has a cylinder underneath that you fill with water. I've got to be honest, I put filtered water in mine because we've got a filter tap. So I don't put it in straight from just a normal cold tap. I don't think it makes any difference where you fill it with or what you fill it with, but I don't want you to be, you know, I'd never fib to you, but I put filtered water in mine. And actually, I'll tell you why it is, because the tap runs slower on the filter tap, and I can control it a little bit more because the cylinder actually in the top of a water brush is small. So I want to be able to control the flow as I am turning the tap on and off. So you fill it up and it simply screws back onto your water brush and you have a lid for it. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab 3 colours, the orange, the red and the yellow. And we're simply going to do that on a stamped image. Now the stamped image has been stamped using a stays on ink pad and the cardstock. Now this is the trick, the cardstock is watercolour card. I don't know if I've just said that, but it's watercolour card which will hold moisture and it will enable you to add the water to be able to blend the colours. So that's what we're going to do. And all you do is take your water brush, make sure, give it a squeeze, make sure you've got some water coming down the channel, and you can see it when it comes out. There we go. And take it over the stamped image, covering it, and that's it. Then you can let that dry and put it through your die cutting machine. I'm going to show you using a contrast of colour, and a paper towel can be your best friend when you're watercolouring. So our leaves for our project are basically green, brown, like this, and you can see I'm really not being very careful with it, and I'm just adding the colour. I could nearly shut my eyes really. So there we go, I've added colour, and you're now thinking, well, that's ruined, totally ruined, Anne-Marie, what you like? So I'm taking my water brush, I'm going to start away from the project. I can wipe my brush end to wipe the excess of colour off from previously. Make sure I've got water coming through it and take it over the project like that. Wipe the brush, start again with a different colour and just blend it like that and let it dry. Or if I think, not sure about this bit, I want to blend that a bit more, take off a bit of the excess colour, pat it with a kitchen towel. So this is your normal kitchen towel. It's not a wet wipe that I've left to dry, it's kitchen towel because it's absorbent. So it absorbs the excess water that you're putting on and it lifts the colour away with it, so then you can get your highlights and make it look like you've simply shaded it. And because you're working on watercolour paper, you can keep going with it and you're not going to damage the paper. Eventually you might if you keep going and keep going and keep going. So you can add and take away. You're in control. Now, I've maybe not explained it too well, but it's literally the case of play with it, have fun. Now, once you've watercoloured, and make sure when you watercolouring, if you're going to die cut, go over the edge, because then that way, when you die cut, the area around the die cut, you can see it, it's still got the colour. You haven't left a white edge. Plus, there'd be nothing worse than you having to sit and colour this in perfectly. Don't go over the edge, don't go over the edge. Well, my way of watercolouring, where you've just been precise, just give it a good old scribble like that, and then we'll take the green. So where you've been all precise and can't go over the edge, give it a good scribble like that. Don't worry about that bit. Watercolour brush, turn it in, there we go, over the edge, and let me just wipe that, start away from it, depends how you want to blend it, there we go, and that's nice and wet, and you can take off the excess with your paper towel, like that. So you can keep blending as you go. So that's how I did the foliage. On a project that we've got coming up next week, I think it is, I'm just going to show you on this corner. We create a watercolour background, and I simply, you saw how careful I was there, and I simply add water and keep adding water until I get it the colour that I want it to be, and take the colour off, and we end up with a very faded background, and just pat it off, and I kept going till it was just the outside of the card, but it had that faint watercolour look. So you can do so much with watercolouring, and I've taken up so long now showing you how to do those. So we need to whip through our card now and put it all together, and I'm just putting my pens away while we're chatting. So let's just do that. So that's how we did our watercolour pieces for the actual card. Now we can go on to the card, and we can start with the inside. So it's a 7x5 it's a 7x7 card that we're going to create, and it's literally so easy. The inside of our card, I've taken a piece of white cardstock, and using 3 colours from the watercolour brushes, I've made 3 straight lines, and then I've taken the watercolour and just painted, just slapping that colour on, so that it's like a smear of colour. And I've stamped using the tiny sentiments, and it says "From my heart," and the heart I've actually coloured in red. So that's just a piece of white cardstock, and we've done that. That wasn't watercolour card. So you see, I wanted to show you that it still works on normal card, but you can't overload it with water, because then it would start to the card would start to dissolve really. So that's our inside. Nice and simple and plain. I'm just going to use my bone folder to make sure we've got a good sharp crease along that edge. And we're using the card so it's edge upwards, so it's like a tent effect. The base of our card, we're going to add a layer of black cardstock. It's just a bit smaller than the actual card itself as a background. So there we go. Get that on as a base. Next, what we've got is some white cardstock with double-sided tape on the inside, and this is quite a deep double-sided tape because I wanted the white cardstock to look like a frame. Oops, there we go, that's the bone folder. So I wanted the double-sided tape to lift it up and make it like a frame effect. And I'm going to pop that on the base of our black cardstock so you can just see the edge of the black around the outside of the frame, just slightly. And then where we've stamped our I Could Fall For You, this was on watercolour card. I watercoloured the background with 3 colours, and believe it or not, it was red, orange and yellow. And I've just swooshed it along. That's a technical term, swooshed it along. I've stamped on top of it, and then between the words I've coloured them in with watercolour pens. So it's kind of like giving a shadow effect. And then I've watercoloured in the actual acorns. Now I've got this on flat tape, and this is going to go into the centre of our frame, like that. Now I know you're thinking, oh, Anne-Marie, you haven't got the black quite even around the edge. Well, I'm not quite worried about that, because what we're going to do next is we're going to add some of our little items that we've die cut and stamped where we've watercoloured them. Now these have been through the Xyron machine, and I'm simply going to add them at the side of the frame like this. And this is why I wanted the frame to stand up and be quite high, because I wanted to be able to add the leaves along the edge to give them a depth, as it were. So we'll just add another one there, like that. And then I've got some loose ones, and we're going to use some silicone glue. Now, this is something I'm asked about all the time, the silicone glue. Where can I get it from? What's the best one? Well, eBay's great for it, I've got to be honest. And as far as I know, you should be able to get it wherever you are in the world on eBay. Double check, but either the pin flare glue, that's the one I like to use. Sticks 2 do one, that's a good one as well. And if you check their website, as far as I know, they post worldwide anyway. Tell them Anne-Marie sent you. Not for any particular reason, but just so they know where you know how you've got there. And then as I say, you can always check eBay as well. So it does take a while to dry. I know somebody was saying, oh, most of them say 24 hours. I think that's because with it being silicone, it has an aroma to it. So it's maybe 24 hours for the aroma to die down more. But normally I find I do leave mine for most of the day to dry. So you can see while I've been chatting, I'm just building that foliage up around the outside. And then finally, I've got some acorns that I've stamped from the main stamp, and I've just repeatedly stamped them and coloured them in, and adding the silicone glue on the back of them, and just making the actual card front come alive with the depth of the silicone that I'm adding to the back of the little stamped images that we've made. And then, last but not least, put the lid on my glue. I've got a little bow, and I've got 3D foam on the back of it, and I think I've actually just put glue on the front of it, but we'll see. So, little bow to finish off the card. So should we put it there or on the edge? We'll have it on the edge. And that is our card finished. Pretty card. Sorry, I'm just wiping my hands because I've got silicone glue on them because I'm a typical crafter. So that's our card finished. We've brought it to life with the outside, with the extra foliage. Obviously at home you can spend a lot more time with it, but it's just such a great card, and it, from my heart, I could fall for you. Stands up nicely. You could adapt it for a different size of card if you didn't want to use a square one. And you've got the watercolouring techniques to make it look like you've shaded and you've coloured all the foliage. And you see how just using different colours with a set of stamps can turn them from a summer bright card into a card for autumn or the fall if you're across the pond. So it's just such a versatile set of products is this. So I do hope you've enjoyed watching. Please feel free to comment. I can't reply to you on YouTube, but I can on my blog and on Facebook. Please click the like button, and please feel free to share any of my projects with your crafty friends, because the more people we can reach that craft, the better. And I just want to say thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.